Welcome to the ThriveMaster Show, where the focus is to reverse engineer action-taking impact makers. On this episode, we have Duyck. Duyck is a retired professional engineer with a distinguished career that culminated in him being Director of Quality and Technology of Northern Telecom Electronics. In his long career, he has worked in cosmetics, electroplating, corrosion control, waste management, industrial hygiene, research, quality management, profitability analysis, and management consulting. Duyck, welcome to the ThriveMaster Show.
All right, good to meet you.
Wonderful. Well, we've met before. We've met at Toastmasters. For those of you who don't know what Toastmasters is, that's where you get to practice public speaking. And I joined a group called the Roncesvalles Speaker Circle. I believe that was the name.
That's right.
And Duyck was one of my mentors, and not only mine, he has mentored many people, and I wanted to invite him on and interview him, and I'm glad to have you on.
Okay, wonderful.
Now, I just want to say that I just turned 40 years old myself, or as one of my mentors said, you turned level 40.
That's right,
Duyck.
Important time.
That's right. Duyck, you just celebrated a birthday. Are you able to share what level you are on?
Well, I'm at 90.
Wow, that blew my mind. Like, I thought you were like 35.
Well, actually, I do think my mind is at 35, but my body is not.
Wonderful. So I'm glad to have you on, and we have 10 questions to go over. So let's start with number one. Duyck, right. What was your childhood like?
Well, I grew up in the Netherlands. Instead of kindergarten, we had a large backyard where my sister and I could play and climb trees. It was the Depression era. My parents were not rich, but my dad made all our toys, except my teddy bear and my sister's baby doll. Although the latter he had to repair once in a while. He made me a train with a big steam engine, and a warehouse with 2 stories, a hoist to pull up bales and boxes. And he built my sister a huge dollhouse with 4 rooms, with electric lights and running water. Our parents allowed us to ask them anything, and they would try and give us an intelligent answer. They also taught us to be responsible at a very early age. At age 6, I could walk to school by myself, safely, at a different time. Later on, we went by bike, and we had all the freedom then. We had tons of books, and we were taught to look up things in a dictionary or encyclopedia. But when I was 10, World War II started, and my dad was put in prison of war camp. But I was made the man of the house. I learned to help my mom and became more responsible. I was intelligent, but had a very poor memory. So I had high marks in math and science, and poor marks in history and languages. But I learned not to rely on my memory and invented all kinds of lists and codes to deal with it. When I was 13, my uncle gave me a canoe. That made me a water rat. And when I joined the Boy Scouts, I hiked a lot, learned camping and backpacking in the beautiful area we were living. So as you can see, I had a good time as a kid. Over to you.
Wow, that's like a form of rich childhood that many parents would wish for their kids. During this COVID time, one of the things I did with my kids was just climb trees, and they had the fun time, the best time that any parent could wish. And we didn't have much, but we had a lot of time together, and them taking on responsibility. And me just hearing your story, there's a different form of richness outside of resources or money and stuff like that that we have today.
Yeah, and parents can make a lot of difference. They don't always realize that, especially when they hand you over to babysitters and kindergarten, you don't know what you get. And right. Your parents can be a really guiding light. And as I mentioned, what they did for us was very important.
Yes. Okay, question number 2. Did you
Yep.
have a specific dream for your life?
Oh, I always wanted to be an engineer. I liked making things. I was intrigued by machines, and I wanted to know how things worked. And I was fascinated by chemistry. I wanted to be smart and useful. So I went to university to study chemical engineering. Over to you.
Wonderful. Number 3, was there a defining moment or a decision that gave you forward momentum?
Oh, yes, there was. I was always self-motivated, ambitious in learning, but not to write exams, but to get to know more and more. I was very bad that way. At university, I only needed to take 28 courses to get my diploma, but I took many electives to a total of 64 courses. That took me much more time than I needed. But in retrospect, many of the electives have been much more valuable to me than those required 28. And when I left university, I got a well-paying job as a plant manager manufacturing cosmetics. Then I got married, but we did not like the industrial area we were living in. And that was when we made the decision to leave Holland and head for Canada. Over to you.
So it seems like throughout your life, you've been a lifelong learner. Would you say that is true? This is a side question.
Oh, most certainly. And you will find that I'm going to talk a lot about that because that is really what my life is all about.
Okay, number 4, can you talk about a failure, struggle in your life, and how do you deal with challenging times?
Well, early on in my life, I had already been taught that failures and setbacks were learning experiences. We were not allowed to whine or complain. If something didn't work, we were told to fix it. In those days, you could take things apart and repair them. My dad had taught me electricity and soldering and let me watch him anytime he was taking anything apart to repair. But World War II was a challenge as materials got scarce, and I learned to repair shoe soles with old pieces of leather or rubber tires, and we used old garden hose to make bike tires. That's when leather elbow patches were invented. You had to be creative then. We learned to be secrets too, hiding the radio behind the books in the bookcase, and listening in the evening to Churchill on the BBC. Especially if hiding people was involved, we learned to keep mum, because what more than 2 people know is not a secret anymore. We learned to smuggle Dutch cheese in a backpack to Belgium and come back with tobacco and chocolate. Trading both ways, we were always supplied with goods which we could either use or barter for other things. But at night, we would wake up to sirens and gunfire when American or British airplanes came over to bomb Germany. Occasionally, our school had to go out to bury one of our schoolmates, victims of bomb or airplane crashing down. But we learned that one of the best places to hide was in the WC, where the walls were close together and it would remain standing when the whole house collapsed on top of it. Coming to Canada was another challenge. I had a wife and a kid and no job, but no mind to turn back. I rented a winterized summer cottage near the beach, north of Montreal, where my wife and son could keep busy while I went out to find a job. And when I ran out of money, I ate Jello on my bread. I had to walk a lot instead of taking the bus. But my first job was carrying boxes with glass bottles. But after a week, my supervisor offered me a job as a lab technician. That gave me a raise and hope. It still took me a year and a half to finally get a job as a professional engineer. Over to you.
Wow, even with the challenges of a war going on, you had to figure it out and be creative and just keep going forward.
That's right.
There's a lesson in it for the times that we're going in through now, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So
Yep.
number 5, you were one of my mentors at Toastmasters and many others. Who was somebody that gave you wisdom or guidance?
Well, first of all, my parents told me, you are born ignorant. If you want to amount to something, you must keep learning. You see, there it is again. Actually, when you keep alert and are willing to learn, you'll find that you can learn from many people. But always be prepared to teach others what you have learned, because teaching forces you to digest and understand better. My parents were not religious. We lived in an area where most people were Roman Catholic, so we stood out as different. We did not look for religion to solve our problems. We had to do that for ourselves. My dad quoted the ancient Greeks as teaching to know yourself as the key to finding the purpose in your life by hitching onto your talent. Then I took a course in philosophy that taught me about many religions and philosophies, but no one really had the answer to what life is all about. My uncle had lived in Indonesia, and he had learned about Buddhism. He introduced me to meditation as a means to connect to my inner self. It had taught him that we're all connected to each other and to the universe. That started me reading about Taoism and Zen, and they became part of my life. Also, reading a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl was another eye-opener that helped me understand that suffering has meaning too. Over to you.
So we can learn and then we can give back by teaching others. So this gives us a transition to our next question. How has being involved in a community like Toastmasters helped you?
Well, my first time in Toastmasters was around 1992.
Wow.
We had a company club then. And as professional engineers, we all had to make many presentations. Some were better than others. And in the club, we learned from each other and perfected our speech making. By the time I retired, I wrote my farewell speech and kept the audience at bay for 45 minutes, telling them stories about the inane things that had happened at the company we all worked for. My second time was 20 years later, when our friend Margot asked me to join and help to charter the Roncesvalles Speaker Circle Club. I came to help, but I came to learn. I wanted to learn evaluation, which in the past had not been a priority. I liked the members of the club and the spirit in them. RSC was different from other clubs and seemed to attract bright young people with good humor, and they still do. In the second year, I found myself elected president, challenged to deal with the leaving of the older charter members and the need to attract new members. Then, in the middle of the year, our treasurer resigned, and I had to take over his job for half a year, as well as trying to find a replacement. That taught me that every executive needs an understudy. Of course, all of these events not only challenged me, but helped me grow and learn to be mentally active and alert. And yes, I also learned advanced levels of public speaking and evaluation that I had come for. Over to you.
Well, I'm glad you joined that Toastmasters group because I learned a lot from you. Okay, number 7, what other communities have you been a part of?
Well, actually quite a few. Already as a student, I was a member of a fraternity, a year club, and a debating club. where I also held several executive positions. In my sporting life, I've been a member of various clubs for hiking, biking, camping, sailing, windsurfing, and skiing. I also have been in 2 theater groups and learned improv. And then, throughout my engineering career, I always tried to join a professional organization in the field I was working in. That gave me opportunities to learn from my colleagues and to make presentations about the things I had done. You may not know it, but there are many different professional organizations, and I would recommend anyone to find them in their own field and join. Over the years, I've been a member of almost a dozen different professional societies and associations. I've been in the executive of some of them and run committees and others. Over to you.
Now, this is a side question. Would you say being involved in different groups who are supportive has added to your longevity, your life in general?
In general, I think, first of all, when they kept me up to date, and if you want to be inspired, you have to be up to date. You cannot be inspired by stuff that was going on 50 years ago. So you have to know what's going on. The other thing is this: at university, you learn to think. Yes. But that's about all. The things you learn there, quite often you have to relearn because things change. I learned electronics 4 times. And so let me give you an example of the societies I was in. It's about cosmetics, electroplating, corrosion control, waste management, circuit board manufacturing, quality management, internet, independent consultants, and management consultants. None of these things you learn at university. So if you want to survive in your business, you have to learn and you have to get to be the best. And you can only be the best if you learn additional information and are prepared to talk with others about it and learn from others. And that's what I did. I have taken on jobs with knowing very little, because when you get into a job, you don't know. You learn, and you learn in the job to do it. And my philosophy is take a job for 5 years. The first 2 years you learn. Then 1 year you coast, and the last 2 years you look for another job. And if you do that, you renew yourself every 5 years. Now, I was able to do that in one corporation, but that doesn't always work.
Now, related to Zen Buddhism, I wonder how the beginner's mind comes in, where you're open to learning new things. Has that helped you, kind of that philosophy of a beginner's mind?
Yeah, most certainly. The idea in Zen is that you empty your mind totally, which means mainly that all the things that are going on in your mind all the time are put away. And when you meditate, you pose a question to the universe, something that affects you. And then you empty your mind and let the nothingness be ready, the void to accept. And if you read about Taoism, it tells you to begin with that emptiness.
Yes.
They said a teapot is only useful because it has an empty inner. And so is our mind. If we are open, things will come back to us. And so I have learned this way to solve my problems. And it's still my strongest way of learning.
Okay, now you said you pose a question. So number 8, is there a question or questions you have asked yourself to help you live a good life?
Most certainly. One of the first things I wanted to know was the meaning of life. This quickly became, what is the meaning of my life? And soon it became apparent that it is not the pursuit of happiness. what most people think. Happiness is a byproduct of leading the right life. But what is the right life? It's different for everybody. But is there a common thread? I found I could be happy anytime I chose to be happy. It was my choice, and it had to be in tune with what I was doing. If I did what I had talents for, I would like what I was doing, and it was easier to be happy. It all seems to hinge on having the freedom to use my talents to the best of my abilities to be useful. And at the basis of all this were the changes and challenges that were the opportunities to learn. And when I could use what I had learned, it would make me feel good about it. So then the good life is a byproduct, not a goal. Over to you.
Wow, that's very powerful. Just that byproduct and not the goal. I'm going to have to review that again, and I think that one is going to stick with me. Number 9, what regular habits mentally, physically, sorry, it seems like my question has been cut off. What regular habits mentally, physically, or spiritually serve you?
Well, as time went on, I learned much more about myself, and that we change every 10 years or so. Until I was 40, I had mostly concentrated on my mental development and goal setting. But 40 was my age for regeneration and renewal. And it is very similar for a lot of people. You find out for yourself. I had neglected my physical body that needed both nutrition and fitness. I had suffered from headaches for 20 years without knowing why. Then a smart family doctor had me tested for sugar and found I had hypoglycemia. Within a week of stopping eating foods with sugar, I was totally free from headaches. That started me on reading labels and find all the crap that is in prepackaged food. I went back to sports, which I had not done since my student years. I stopped smoking, went back to sailing, followed by windsurfing, skiing, snowboarding, rollerblading, skateboarding, and even dancing. And I taught windsurfing and snowboarding. I was fit, and I still am. And when I was 50, my friends started having heart attacks and were told by the doctor to stop eating meat. I thought, why wait until they tell me? Let's stop now. And I became a vegetarian. Not a vegan. I still eat fish and eggs daily. I also learned that magnesium is vital for the heart, while calcium combines with sugar and creates plaques, not just on teeth, but also in the arteries. Now, as I mentioned earlier, my spiritual development had already started in my teens and kept going throughout my life, while integrating meditation with my daily habits. I always keep my eyes open and my mind for what is the universe trying to tell me. It has become second nature to me. Life does have meaning, and so does suffering, but we have to discover what it is. What we haven't addressed yet is emotional development. I have had to deal with death a lot since I was born. It has me much more resilient, but it's not enough to learn to deal with events. We need to have empathy and compassion when communicating with other people. But I've never been a good communicator at the emotional level. I've been told I can be a little too rough. At least that's what women have told me. But then women are often the exact opposite on the emotional scale. So either way, we need to have empathy for others, and let's leave it at that. Back to you.
Wow, Duyck, you've given us a lot already, and then I think you've already kind of answered the last question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. In closing, what advice would you give to the rest of us trying to live a rich life?
All right, Varen, your task, as I see it, is live to be your best and give your best. Choose to be happy and never stop learning. Now, I like to break this down into 4 parts. 1, you are the only person responsible for your life. So live it well. Life is not a goal, but a journey. Don't dwell on the past. Learn from all failures. Don't accept guilt, but accept responsibility. Don't worry about the future. It may never happen. But make plans for prevention to not repeat the past. And that makes us live in the moment. It's the only time when you can live, set goals, and make decisions. Number 2, take good care of your body, your emotions, your mind, and your spirit. Only then can you be useful to others. Be healthy. Avoid all and anything that may poison them. If you don't know what's good for you and you don't do it, you only have yourself to blame. Be positive. Avoid negative people and situations that pull you down. And teach yourself and your children to be disciplined and have empathy. Number 3, put your heart into anything you do, be it a hobby, nutrition, sport, work, or volunteering. Learn all you can about it. Persevere. Don't give up. Join people who are doing the same. Learn from each other. Get to know your talents and your weaknesses. Learn what you don't know and teach what you do. Learn to discover the meaning of your life. And then finally, number 4, embrace change. Do not resist it. Change is the essence of life. Never worry about what you cannot control. Deal with it and manage it. To resist change is the first step to death. Go with the flow and keep up to date. Life is learning from changes and challenges. May the force be with you. Over to you.
Wow, the byproduct of this conversation has put a smile on my face, and I'm really happy to have had this time with you and to share this with others. My question to you is there a book in you that needs to be written, or is there one out there about your life already?
There, actually, I have been writing different things, like, let me say this. There are so many things that happened in my life that it would take a big book to write it. And when you asked me these questions and I started to think about them, I found I can only touch the surface.
Okay.
And so what I try to do is to pick out the major lessons that I have learned in my life and to give you a little bit of the background of it. But
yes.
each question could be an hour's talking. This is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very happy with your question because they made me realize that there are so many things to think about and that life is so very interesting. Yes. So it helped me to write down some of the things that I hadn't written down before. And I would love to have the time to keep writing, and I could probably keep writing forever.
Well, Duyck, Duyck, thank you very much for your taking this time.
Oh, well, you're most welcome, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm sure everybody that's going to hear this will enjoy it as well.
Okay, thank you.